Hi, I'm Mike with House on the Mend, and in episode 5 of our ongoing work/travel van build series on this Ram Promaster 2500 high roof, we're going to be installing 700 watts of flexible solar with no screws and only 2 drill holes. So let's get started. House on the Mend. Now, the method I'm using to install our solar panels is inspired by the YouTube channel RV with Tito DIY. He had a flat roof RV that he installed flexible solar on using this method here. Ours is going to be a little different because it's on a van and our roof is corrugated instead of that flat kind of rubberized roof that you have on most RVs. Now, I am using 4 175 watt Renogy flexible solar panels. You might be asking, why would you use flexible solar panels? They are nowhere near as efficient as the glass rigid panels, and that is absolutely true. To install the rigid panels, you would have to have a lot more height involved because there's framing and things that go on, whereas this method, I am only coming off the roof about an 1.5 inches or so when it's all said and done, which is pretty impressive. As you may recall from the earlier videos, I am able to currently drive this van into our garage and work on it for changing brakes, installing solar panels and windows and all sorts of other things. So if I add too much height, even as much as 4 inches, I'm going to lose that ability to bring the van into the garage. And that's why everything I'm doing up on the roof is going to be very minimal in height. Thus the reason why I chose the flexible solar panels. So flexible solar panels are much more efficient if they have air circulation underneath them. So this whole install is actually floating on 3 rows of this aluminum T-track that's going to be glued into place, and then we're running the T-slot bolts all the way along the 3 rows to attach the solar panels. Now, just like in Tito's videos, I didn't want my solar panels to be flapping in the wind at highway speeds. So between each panel and at the front and the end, I have vinyl lattice molding that I got from Home Depot, and they fit perfectly into the slots of that lattice molding. Now, these solar panels are a little bit wider than the outermost channels of our roof. So you will see me using these flat corner braces on both sides to secure the panels down. Now, I think because these are flexible solar panels, they have pretty minimal packaging, but it's still adequate, and I wanted to let you see what it looks like. All right, and then you have these little corner pieces on top and bottom. Middle pieces are a little thicker, top and bottom, and here again, top and bottom. The smallest T-track bolts that I could find diameter-wise were these 1/4 thread, and those are going to slide right into the T-track rails. The only problem is these little grommets here are not a 1/4 inch. They're just under that. So I'm going to very carefully drill those out just a little bit so that they'll fit. And what I noticed is if you start right with the 1/4 inch drill bit, it will blow out that grommet. So you got to go in 2 steps. It slows the process down a little, but it's worth it. Now you're going to hold the little washer in place, otherwise it'll spin once it starts getting the friction of the drill bit. And then I'm starting with a 15/64 drill bit, and first going through and reaming out that little eyelet, and then I step up to the 1/4 inch bit. And when I do that, I have yet to have one of these eyelets pop out, whereas 2 of them I went straight to the 1/4 inch bit and blew them out. But after we do that, now we can very easily insert the solar panel and the vinyl sheath that's going to go on them with a 1/4 bolt. Now on the leading edge of the solar panels, so the very front and the very back, I'm going to use this single
piece of vinyl lattice molding, and it's got a channel in it that's going to fit right in there. We'll drill a hole through, and the T-bolt will come through and will be secured down with a washer. Now, in between, remember we have 4 solar panels, so in between the union of the solar panels, I'm going to have 2 of these, what they call H divider. And you can see because it looks like an H, and they're already kind of molded together. And so I'm going to slide those on for the center bracing, and then put another solar panel right here, and then bolt those down onto the T-track as well. Now this stuff comes in 8-foot lengths. We need ours to be 59 1/8 in this Renogy panels case, so I'm going to cut those down with a chop saw. All right, 59 1/8. So to add a little bit of rigidity, even though these panels are fairly rigid, and to promote airflow underneath the panels, which has been shown to improve their efficiency a bit, I'm going to be installing these clear plastic polycarbonate sheets on the bottom of the solar panels. Now, I was able to buy a 5-pack of these that are 2 foot by 4 foot wide on Home Depot, and it was a better price than buying a full 4x8 sheet and then having to cut it down myself, so that's what I went with. We're going to adhere them to the solar panels with Loctite Marine adhesive. This adhesive specifically says that it is good with plastic and polycarbonate, which is great. Surface preparation, I typically use acetone before I adhere things like I did in the Windows video, but it specifically says on here that rubbing alcohol is very effective, so that's what we're going to use. To ensure that I don't get any bleed out from the sides or the edges, I'm going to lay a pretty decent bead, but a little bit back from those edges. All right, don't center off of those middle eyelets, because they're not actually the center. If you measure them, there's 2 different lengths from each end, so try to center it if that's what you're going to do off the panel itself. Now, interestingly, when you read the instructions for this marine adhesive, it says once you adhere it, if you can separate it to allow the air to come in and then reset it, it actually helps it to cure better because it allows a little bit more moisture from the air to get in and help with the curing process. So I wanted to share that with you. All right, 3 more. These 2 remaining cutouts of that stall mat from when we did the subfloor are pretty heavy and also soft enough that they won't hurt anything as we add a little weight. I think I'll put a cinder block or 2 down to evenly distribute the pressure downward. We're sitting on the Renogy box. I wanted to say that I needed a little over 1 tube of that marine adhesive to get that S-curve of caulk through all these panels. So make sure you got at least 2 of those with you when you get started. The cure time on the bottle says 24 hours to paint. I imagine since it says it's fast curing that it'll actually set up faster than that, but we're going to leave it here with some downward pressure to keep all of those sandwiched together for a while we move on. So I've got all 4 panels laid out with the vinyl lattice molding in between them and at the ends, and that comes out to exactly 107 inches, so 1 inch shy of 9 feet. And the pieces of T-track that I purchased for both sides and down the middle are exactly 3 feet each. So it is just about a perfect fit. There's just going to be a tiny little bit of overlap on either side. So I'm bolting the T-track directly to the solar panels temporarily without the lattice molding, so I can keep all the T-track perfectly square to the solar panels. And that also, with the corner brackets and this center 2 eyelets, helps me line up perfectly where I'm going to use that marine adhesive to glue in all this T-track. And incidentally, 9 feet of T-track, if you start right here and you go all the way down to the end of the tape measure, which the shot might be a little blown out down there, is actually ends right before that rectangular area in the roof that is right behind the driver's and passenger seats where people typically put their air conditioners in rooftop. So if I ever change my mind and want to mount a rooftop air conditioner, then I'll still be free to do that. So the next step, now that I've got 3 solar panels linked up like this, all square to the T-track, is to clean out these 3 areas of the roof and the bottoms of all the T-track to get ready to adhere them to each other.
So we're up on top of the roof, and I have to say it's really sturdy. Let's get into it here. I'm hoping the rest of this tube will get us through these couple, well, at least 2 of the panels. We'll see. Okay. I'm sweating all over my workspace. All right, that's one. All 3 sets of T-track are installed. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll remove the solar panels that were there just to temporarily keep the spacing. And I'm going to run another bead down the sides of the T-track so it looks really nice like that. And then we'll be ready to start reapplying all 4 solar panels along with the vinyl lattice molding. So with the T-track sitting in the bottom channel of the roof line, you can see that we're really only going to have the 3/4 of an inch of the vinyl lattice molding, the washer and the nut as the height. So maybe just a little bit over an inch higher than the actual roof line. So I noticed these 1/4-20 T-bolts are a little bit loose in this track, whereas if you pull them over to one side, you can actually pull them out. And that made me a little bit nervous. When you tighten them, of course, they're going to turn like that and hold in place. But nonetheless, it made me nervous that over time they could come loose and actually wiggle out, and we'd have a solar panel running free. I didn't want that. So I wanted to put a washer down on top of this bolt so that it can better hold in that slot. Now this is 1/4-20, so I first thought of just using a regular 1/4 inch washer, but guess what? Those are too wide and they will not fit in this slot. So instead, what you need to use is an M7, either lock washer or flat washer, and those are exactly the same size, 14 millimeters, as this slot. And you can see that slides right in there. There's still a little bit of play for making adjustments, but it absolutely can't come out. And then the T-bolt still can't spin, so the only thing it does is add to the stability. So that was my solution. So when getting these angle brackets, these corner braces ready to go in, I put the T-slot bolts inside first, then I bolted them down fairly snug. Then I came in with an angle grinder and cut off the pieces, just like this and this, leaving a little bit, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and then ground them down just a little bit so they weren't jagged. And that way, when you put over here, when you put the vinyl molding on, it'll give a standoff between the solar panel and these nuts. The vinyl rests on this bolt here, and that keeps it from wearing away at the bottom of the solar panel. And then once the vinyl and solar panel eyelet are on this screw here, then on top of that goes another washer and another nylon threaded bolt on top to hold everything down. All right, we got 3 panels in with 4 pieces of the vinyl molding, and a couple things that are really important. First of all, these brackets, make sure you leave them really loose. You'll have room to get underneath with a wrench and tighten them up later, but it's going to be critical to get a little bit of leeway like that to get everything to line up. And then as you slip the next panel into this dual channel slot, you have to reach underneath the panel and wiggle these T-bolts to get right into the spot underneath. So it's not pretty, it's kind of a hassle. Last thing, you can see some of the vinyl shavings here. Be prepared to elongate any screw holes like this if things just aren't lining up. Nothing's perfect. All right, everything's all bolted down securely above and below. And the only thing left is to run down the center with an angle grinder with a cutting wheel and cut all those protruding bolts up above those nuts.
We're getting ready to hook up these solar panels in series, and that means we're going to have an end of cable up at the front and one down towards the back, and we need to look at a spot to start putting those cables into the van. Now, the standard way to do it is you drill a hole in the van, and all over YouTube I see folks using these double gang boxes here where the wires go in, you screw these nuts down, it holds them securely, and then you use the same marine adhesive or any of the other types of really good watertight adhesives to hold it down. It's nice, it's clean, it's pretty looking. The only problem with this one and a Promaster van is that this is too wide to go almost anywhere on the van, especially on the edge here where I'm wanting to run my wires through because the solar panels have all the cabling over here on the driver's side. So as you can see in this picture, when you put the double gang even as far over as you can, it still hangs over around the edge towards the driver's side. So instead of that, I'm going to use these singles that I found. And that gives me the freedom to place them anywhere along this driver's side system, and then just make sure from the inside that that channel up there at the roof line where the wall meets the roof is a good spot that you can access and run the cabling down to the solar controller, the charge controller. All right, so I looked at the diameter of this standard PV1 solar cabling, and it is roughly 9/32 of an inch. And I'll be darned if I didn't go to Home Depot and find little grommets in their specialty screw drawers that were 9/32 of an inch. And so when you slide those right on, they're a nice, good fit. That's going to protect the cabling from wire chafing. Wire chafing is a really serious problem with moving vehicles, and you want to try to avoid it as much as possible by protecting the sheathing. If you ever looked into the General Dynamics F-16 program, they almost shut that whole program down because they were losing so many aircraft and sadly pilots, and when they figured out what was going on, it was wire chafing. So we're not piloting this thing in the air, but we're still driving down the road and we don't want to have any issues. The grommet will help protect from that. Now the outer diameter of this grommet I measured to be around 11/32. So I'm going to start with a real small drill bit that's a little easier to start with the initial hole going into the roof of the van, and then I have this step-up bit, and I've marked it with a little blue Sharpie right where 11/32 is, because the writing is really tiny, and I'm going to step up that hole right to exactly 11/32. Then we can pop in the grommet and feed the wiring through. Right behind the window here on the driver's side, there's this seam that goes all the way up the Promaster. And I use that to take a measurement over and find a really good spot where I'd have clear access to the channel up here. And that is 12 inches over from that seam.
So from the inside channel, there's our pilot hole. And now I'm going to widen that hole. So I'm going to try something a little silly here. I've got this little cup that we use to put like seasonings and sprinkles and stuff in for the kids. And I put a little magnet on the bottom of it. And I'm going to tape it up over that hole so when I widen it, let's see how many shavings we can catch rather than them falling inside the van. All right. Well, whatever the magnet didn't catch, the little plastic cup sure did. So I cleaned all the surfaces, including all the areas where I was going to put down painter's tape, laid down the marine adhesive, pressed down the little wire cover, ran my finger around just like you would a bead of caulk in the bathroom or the sink to make it up, dressed up pretty nice, and then ran tape across both directions to hold it down while it dries. So that wiring's coming down right here by the window we installed, and then further back is the other portion of the wiring. Now I'm going to fish these through and run them along this nice open channel and down, because over here is going to be the battery bank and all the electrical. But before I fish them through where there's all this metal, I want to cover them in this simple plastic wiring conduit. I bought this in a 10-foot roll at a auto parts store here in town. But I'm going to start by spreading it open, getting it up close here, taped off with electrical tape. And then while it's outside of the channel, I'm going to run it all the way through, tape it down in several spots. And that'll be a lot easier than trying to go through here with the wiring and taping up this conduit. All right, we got all the wire wrapped up in this plastic conduit, taped off every 18 inches, 2 feet or so. And I ran this steel fish tape, which is just really thick, rigid wire if you've never seen it before. It's an electrician's must-have. I ran that all the way through this top channel. Rather than running it around this 90-degree bend and down, I'm just going to do it in 2 stages. First the top channel, and then I'll come back and do the straight run down, which is pretty simple. I already did it with the other cable. So we're going to get it started right here. Good. Now I'll do the same thing coming down here, and I'm going to come right out over here on the left side of the wheel well. This is where the cage and the battery is going to go. Now you may be wondering why I didn't go down this way and just come across this channel, which you could, it's open. And I'm sure I'll get to a point where I need to run some wire through here, but I'm going to try to avoid as much as possible going through this channel, because this is going to be where the bed is, and there's going to be riv nuts and screws and things going in to hold down the L-track that I'm putting here. And I just don't want to take a chance on any screws and things rubbing on the wiring, so why not go up here where nothing's going to bother it. Got this piece of trim back on. It's going to be a great channel to run a bunch of electrical stuff eventually, but for now I'm putting it back on just to keep everything looking nice and tidy. The two cables are coming right out of this channel here, and this above this wheel well on the driver's side is the rack where the bank of batteries and all the electrical equipment's going to go. So I've just temporarily got the two cables, the positive and negative, tied here with a zip tie and then kept together with another one over here. I did cover both ends of the wiring with a couple wraps of electrical tape. That way there's no way they can touch anything and short out our solar panels up there. And I also, while I was at it, marked the red for positive on the positive wire coming in, just so when I get ready to set everything up and hook these up to the charge controller, it'll save me time. All I'll have to do is just confirm again that that's correct, and off we'll go. Now we need to head back up to the roof, and I want to show you how I'm clamping down all the various wire connections along the driver's side run of the solar panels. I bought these insulated cable clamps at Home Depot, and every connector I have held down as close as possible onto the T-track so that we don't have these guys flapping in the wind. You can see this one's right here at the corner, holding that union together as well. And here is the final product, working great, super low profile. Now, this set of panels has actually been installed on the van for about a year now, so I'm able to give you some definite feedback on what you're going to find. First of all, the lattice molding has broken off on several of the ends. And I think that could be just my fault because I went through a couple of drive-throughs where they had the little clearance sign hanging on chains, and what it claimed the clearance was not accurate for the actual sign, and the sign bumped and drug along the top of the solar panels and broke several of these lattices. I have noticed since that point that they appear that they may have shrunk on the ends as well. So over time, this vinyl may constrict. And so the one thing I would do differently, because I can easily replace these, is I'm going to slot out the vinyl a little bit more so it has the ability to expand and contract in changes of temperature. Next, the only thing I've noticed up here that has yellowed from the UV light are the two solar cable entries. They are still holding up well, so is the marine adhesive, but they have discolored. Now the panels themselves look like they have faded or oxidized a little from their original dark finish, but they're holding up well. They still have plenty of flexibility and they're not brittle. So if you found this video helpful, will you please give it a thumbs up? It really helps the algorithms to start suggesting it to more van enthusiasts like you. Also, please consider subscribing. We're only getting started on this van build, and I also do lots of tool reviews, and there's many more of those to come. It's also free. All you have to do is be signed into your account and click subscribe, or if you follow me on Rumble, just click follow. It really helps the channel. Now I'm gonna leave links for everything I used on this install. Other than the lattice, everything is going to be Amazon affiliate links. So full disclosure, if you click on them and end up making a purchase, it won't cost you a thing, but I do get a small reward at the end of the month. Now let's go down and go over the costs and the weight that we added on this build. So at the end of every video in this series, we are going over the cost of this particular video and then also the weight we added, because the Ram Promaster payload is around 4,000 pounds and we're keeping a running tabulation. So the 4 Renogy panels were $1,103, weighing 25 pounds. The 9 pieces of T-track were $108, weighing 18 pounds. The T-bolts were $26, 5 pounds. Miscellaneous nuts and washers, $20, 5 pounds. The marine adhesive, I believe I used 3 tubes, but it might have been more. Nonetheless, those were $52, adding 3 pounds. The lattice molding was $43, weighing about 4 pounds. The solar cable entries up on the roof were $12 and a negligible weight. And finally, we had the 4 polycarbonate panels underneath the solar panels that cost $105, weighing 10 pounds. That gives us a subtotal of $1,469 for this video and 70 pounds added. If we add that to episodes 1 through 4, we come up with the running total of $4,831, adding 619 pounds. In our next video, we are going to be going over this cage that houses all my electrical, from the 3 200 amp hour batteries to all of the circuitry and the charge controller, everything underneath. I'll show you the whole makeup. I'll show you the emergency shutoffs. We'll link up the batteries and we'll put everything on the app and get it all running in the next video. So until then, thank you for watching.